Hi everyone, welcome, good morning. Thank you for joining our session first thing Monday morning. I am Aditi Suresh, Sustainability Specialist with the Worldwide Specialist Organization at AWS. I provide sustainability expertise to develop and bring to market scalable solutions on AWS and help our customers achieve their sustainability objectives. This morning, I am joined by Brian Rowe, who's the Director of Information Security and IT at the Rehrig Pacific company, who are industry leaders in waste, recycling, and supply chain solutions. And today, we'll be sharing more about how we can use AI for ESG reporting and data-driven decision making. With that, let's get started. So in today's session, we'll kick it off with an overview of the ESG trends and challenges, followed by the role that AI plays in ESG reporting and insights. We'll then have a look at how AWS AI/ML capabilities can be leveraged for ESG reporting. We'll then dive deep into a couple of use cases, and we'll show some art of possible demos as well. I'll then hand it over to Brian to share more about the Rehrig Pacific company's ESG reporting journey with us. So you've probably heard of the term ESG, which is environmental social governance. I'm not going to delve deeper into it, but in a nutshell, these are non-financial factors ranging from carbon emissions, workforce diversity, social impacts, and so on. And financial institutions are increasingly using ESG data as an indicator of risk and performance. So if you look at the ESG trends, regulations are here. The landscape has evolved tremendously over the past couple of years. We have regulations such as the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, also known as CSRD, which have been passed in Europe. And companies are increasingly being mandated to report on their ESG data. The second trend we are seeing is there is an increase in exposure of risk of litigation. So there are penalties for non-compliance, and there is a reputational and operational risk associated with ESG reporting now. And finally, there is a focus on evaluating the supply chain further, looking at transparency, looking at the supply chain impacts, emissions across the value chain. And what we've found is, it's no surprise, 95% of organizations agree that technology is going to be the key enabler for successfully implementing ESG reporting processes. Now, ESG reporting can be complex and burdensome. Organizations face many challenges when it comes to collecting, analyzing, and reporting on ESG data. And the fundamental challenge is data. There are times when some of this data isn't being collected at all, and when it is, it resides in silos across different systems and even between different teams. So it is extremely time and resource intensive to collect all this data and then consolidate and report on it. And what we found is that 86% of companies are still recording their data manually in spreadsheets. The other challenge is there is lack of unified frameworks for ESG reporting. There are so many different frameworks that, with each country there is a specific regulation. However, the metrics remain the same. So it becomes challenging to figure out which ESG data to report, where to report, whom to disclose it to. And then we have inconsistency in data quality and reliability as well. This results from immature data management practices, and that limits our ability to derive meaningful insights at scale. Now let's take a look at how AI can be a game changer for managing these ESG efforts and play a key role in addressing those pain points. I think everyone in the audience is familiar with AI and what machine learning is, but I'm going to double click on a couple of subsets of machine learning. One of which is deep learning. This is a type of machine learning which uses a technique called deep neural networks. So it replicates how the human brain functions. So we are able to address more complex use cases than was previously possible. And finally, we have generative AI, These are powered by large language models that are pre-trained on vast amounts of data. And with generative AI, now we are able to create new content. So this includes conversations, text, images, videos, and stories, and so on. Now, taking an ESG reporting lens on this, so how can we use AI to help move the needle for ESG reporting? So we've categorized the use cases by key elements of ESG reporting. So from the left to right, you can see that on the very left, we have automate data collection. So we can use AI to automate document processing for various ESG data sources. So these could range from, for example, utility invoices, different like interpretation of sustainability documents, standards, and regulations. Then we can use AI to automate information gathering from different silos and unstructured data sources. Use AI to classify ESG data and standardize it. And then once you've collected the data, we want to bridge the data gaps and build models on that. So we can leverage AI for filling data gaps automatically by using industry-validated proxy data. We can use ML models to streamline the ESG KPI modeling, use generative AI to rapidly build models based on evolving ESG methodologies. Then third, we have check for compliance. So once you've collected the data, calculated your metrics, we can use AI to query and summarize different sustainability disclosure requirements, map those ESG metrics to multiple frameworks, and then help third parties audit ESG reports, so accelerating their audits by analyzing multiple documents and creating a gap analysis of the disclosure requirements. And finally, we have generate reports and insights. So we can use AI to automatically build different ESG reports based on the framework of our choice. We can use AI ML models for anomaly detection, trending, alerting, and so on. Then we can also use AI ML for actionable intelligence. So, for example, benchmarking data for supplier selection and trying to identify which supplier has lower impact. So with AI-driven ESG reporting and insights, we are now able to unlock many benefits. So first is you can reduce time and effort. So it frees up our time and resources. Cost savings, so we are going to reduce compliance cost by streamlining our reporting efforts. Then we have audit-proof and transparent reporting. We are better able to manage our operational and reputational risk. And then finally, we're able to accelerate time to insight. So we're able to gain an increased visibility and accountability across our ESG initiatives. Now let's have a look at how AWS AI/ML capabilities can be used to accelerate our ESG reporting efforts. So as you see in this slide, we have a suite of services across our AI/ML stack. At AWS, we are innovating on behalf of our customers, and we have the broadest and deepest set of machine learning capabilities for builders of all levels of expertise. So our goal is to remove the undifferentiated heavy lifting and help our customers move faster. Now, I'm going to show you how we can map key AWS services to key functions required for ESG reporting. So the first we have here is intelligent document processing and search. So we have Amazon Textract, which is our AI/ML service that you can use to automatically extract data from utility invoices such as electricity, water, and waste, and you can use it for your ESG KPI calculations. Then we have Amazon Kendra, which is our AI-powered intelligence search for faster answers from siloed and unstructured data sources. Then we have data transformation. So this is required for ESG KPI modeling. So we can use Amazon SageMaker for streamlining our modeling efforts. So you can automate emission factor selection for KPI modeling. We also have our new geospatial ML feature in SageMaker, which can be used to analyze biodiversity indicators like deforestation risk. Then we have Amazon Bedrock, which is our generative AI service that you can use to quickly build ESG calculations based on rapidly evolving regulations. Then we have data validation. So in this case, we can build proprietary ML models on SageMaker to detect errors, anomalies, and trends and alerts. We can use generative AI on Amazon Bedrock to benchmark and fill data gaps with proxy data. Then we have data analytics and insights. So you can use Amazon Forecast to forecast our ESG metrics. We can use generative AI to identify hotspots, recommend actions to improve ESG performance. And then we've launched our generative BI capabilities within Amazon QuickSight, where you can use natural language prompts to build interactive dashboards. And finally, for ESG reporting, there is a need to create a lot of content. So there's a need for content creation, summarization, and insights. So we can use Amazon Bedrock here to automatically build ESG reports, query different sets of sustainability regulations, summarize them, accelerate our third-party audits with ESG reporting disclosure gap analysis. Now we're going to dive deeper into a couple of use cases and see how AI can help enhance ESG reporting and insights. So for today, we are going to explore 3 use cases, which are highlighted in yellow. You've seen this slide before. And we're going to share some, like a glimpse of the art of possible demos and see examples of how we can use AWS for ESG reporting. So let's get started. For the first use case, this focuses on how generative AI can be used to query and summarize sustainability documents for quick insights. So today, sustainability professionals and financial analysts manually retrieve and analyze dense regulations and documents which can be over hundreds of pages long. And this is extremely time-consuming, practically infeasible, and very costly exercise. So there is a need to rapidly and accurately analyze large volumes of text-based information, summarize the text, and draw insights. For example, look at what are the different ESG disclosure requirements, what data needs to be collected, how to calculate the data. So we'll see an art of possible demo where we use generative AI to query a couple of sustainability documents and extract insights out of those. And this is going to help us accelerate our time to insight and save on costs and cut down on standards interpretation time. So we built a proof of concept here, and what the demo will feature is a chatbot where we are going to query and access insights from key sustainability standards such as the Greenhouse Protocol, which is a standard that provides guidance on carbon footprint calculation methodologies. Then we have also preloaded the demo with sustainability regulations such as the CSRD, which is a Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. And we built this proof of concept using Amazon Bedrock, which is our fully managed service that provides a way for you to build and scale generative AI applications using foundation models. So for our proof of concept, we've used Anthropic's Claude V2 foundation model. And we also use a RAG approach, which is retrieval augmented generation within the framework, to augment the context with relevant sustainability data from documents. So I'm going to quickly move on to the demo here. So in this example, we are going to ask questions on the greenhouse gas protocol, which many of you may be familiar, is over 200 pages long. So this is the standard that provides us with a methodology to calculate the carbon footprint. So we're going to ask a question on how to calculate scope 3 emissions from purchased goods services. So these are, for example, this is scope 3 carbon footprint is the emissions from your supply chain. So you'll see that it's able to quickly scan the document and it retrieves relevant information, and it's accurately summarizing the top 4 methods to calculate the scope 3 emissions. So we have, for example, supplier-specific method, hybrid method, and so on. So now let's ask a follow-up question on this and ask the model to elaborate on one specific method with the help of an example. So we're going to take the example of a supplier-specific method and ask the model and say that, hey, if I were a T-shirt company and I purchased cotton from a supplier in China for manufacturing clothing, how do I calculate my carbon footprint? So you'll see that it's able to coherently provide responses, like a step-by-step responses based on the example that we requested. So you can see that there is a 6-step process, and it also tells us that we need to check for data quality, what type of data we need to collect from the supplier. Moving on, now let's switch to an example where we compare two different documents. So there is a need for sustainability professionals to review multiple frameworks at a time. So in this example, we are going to see how we can compare two regulations. We have taken the example of CSRD, which is a Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, and SEC, the new proposed climate rules and regulations. So we are going to ask the model to summarize the key differences between these two regulations, and in particular, walk us through those key differences based on the scope, the timing, the methodology, and so on. And as you can see, the model is able to review those two large documents. These are over 700 pages long, and it summarizes the text and shares insights with us. So you can see, it's looking at the methodology, scope, materiality. For the scope, it's accurately saying that the CSRD scope covers a broader range. We're looking at different ESG topics, whereas the SEC's regulation is focused on climate risk. Now, we can also see if it's able to retrieve citations and references. So I'm going to ask a question on, say, what is double materiality? So how is double materiality defined? And we're going to ask the model to pull up the citations and the page numbers and see if it's able to return it accurately. So you'll find that it's able to cite the page numbers and the sections. So this is going to significantly cut down the time spent in standards interpretation for sustainability experts and auditors. Moving on to another example, here we are going to query corporate sustainability reports. So we have preloaded Amazon's sustainability report, and we're going to ask a question on what is Amazon doing to reduce its transportation emissions? And we're going to see if it's able to summarize all the different initiatives for Amazon. And our Amazon sustainability report is over 80 pages long. And you can see it's quickly able to summarize and draw insights for us. And for example, it's talking about our our investment in EV vehicles. And you can also see, have a look at the metadata and figure out and check for the references. So moving on to the next use case, this use case looks at how we can calculate supply chain emissions faster using ML-powered emission factor recommendations. Now, as we saw in the previous demo example, to calculate supply chain emissions, that is scope 3 emissions, we require supply chain purchase data. So we require data such as transactions. For example, the dollar amount spent in products procured or the mass of volume that's procured from suppliers. And then we need to translate this data into a carbon footprint using what we call as emission factor. So today, sustainability experts are manually mapping these product names to an appropriate emission factor in order to calculate scope 3 emissions more accurately. So we have a solution for this. We have an ML-powered model where you can automatically map these product names and associate them with the appropriate emission factor. So this is going to help us reduce the time and effort in modeling, as well as, this is a scalable solution when we have millions of SKUs that we need to model. And it also saves on time and effort and helps improve the accuracy of the Scope 3 assessment. So let's have a look at the demo. Now, there are several emission factor databases, and they vary by geography and sector. So in this example, we've selected the US EEIO database. So this is a freely available government database, and it provides carbon emissions per dollar of the product purchased. So let's start a emission factor mapping job. What I'm going to do is we're going to add 3 different product names. So the first one we're doing is a 15-inch laptop. And in the description, we can enter 1,000 laptops. The second product we added is T-shirts, 1,000 T-shirts. And then finally, we're going to switch it up to another sector, look at polyethylene or PET. Now, the goal is to see the accuracy of the emission factor mapping. So as this model runs in the background, what it's going to do is it's going to look at the USEIO database and provide us with the top 5 mappings or recommendation. And we can still have a human in the loop to validate whether it's an appropriate emission factor or not. So in this example, for the laptop, it's selected electronic computer manufacturing, which seems right. Then for the second one, for T-shirts, we have a better matching. So we can choose apparel manufacturing. And then the third one for polyethylene, you look at it says synthetic fiber and filament manufacturing with a high level of confidence. And you can see it provides the emission factor, the carbon emissions per dollar. So when we run the impact assessment now, it's going to return the Scope 3 emissions for us for each product. So in this way, as a sustainability expert, we are significantly able to improve the efficiency of the modeling and also improve our accuracy of calculating Scope 3 emissions. Now let's look at our final use case. So this is automatically extracting data from utility invoices to accelerate ESG reporting. Now, one of the ESG reporting requirements focus on utility consumption. So there's water, waste, electricity, and so on. And we also need to report on the associated emissions with those. So as we saw earlier, the biggest challenge today is manual data collection. So today, a lot of operational managers are manually retrieving this data from utility invoices and entering those into spreadsheets. So we have a solution to automate this. We can use Amazon TextRact, which is our AI/ML service that can read and automate document processing to accurately extract data from documents. So this is going to help us reduce the manual effort and achieve cost savings and improve accuracy. So in this demo, we're going to see how our AWS partner FlexZero is using Amazon TextRact to automatically extract the utility data from electricity invoices in order to process what we call as Scope 2 emissions. So this is a ESG reporting requirement. So the Scope 2 emissions are emissions associated with purchased electricity. So what we're going to see is within the FlexZero portal, you can upload any utility invoice in any format, and the Amazon TextRact service is going to help extract the kilowatt hours of electricity consumed. And then we'll apply an emission factor, which gives us a carbon intensity based on the electricity grid mix of a region, and then we can calculate the Scope 2 emissions. So this is our FlexZero data entry portal. So we're going to upload a sample utility invoice here. Just for the sake of this demo, we are going to upload a sample PG&E utility invoice. And we're going to run the analysis. And we can also do this in bulk. So we can upload invoices in bulk and also for many different languages. And it's going to run this and return the kilowatt hour of electricity that was consumed. Now, Amazon Textract also has a service where you can extract this information using queries feature as well. As you can see, the model has returned the kilowatt hour of electricity consumed. Now, Amazon Textract, as I mentioned earlier, has a service where you can also, for the same utility bill, you can use a query to extract the data using our queries feature. So in this case, we're going to ask the same question, like how many kilowatt hour were consumed. And it's going to return the response. So this can be used, for example, there are times when you don't have the utility consumption data, and you probably need to use cost to estimate your scope 2 emissions. So you can see it return the response here. And now we're going to ask another question on the total amount that was charged. So we can also use spend data to assess the emissions associated with electricity. And you can see it's able to extract the total cost data successfully. Now that's a wrap-up of our demos. I'll now hand it off to Brian, who's going to share more insights on how Rehrig Pacific companies partnering with FlexZero to accelerate ESG reporting. Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Aditi. I'm not gonna lie, she had all the hard stuff. I get to do all the easy stuff. So, show of hands, who in here has heard of Rehrig Pacific Company? I'm eliminating Jason up here. Yeah, that's what I thought. We're not a consumer brand. We are a B2B shop. We're a 110-year-old family-owned manufacturing company. I used to say we're a 110-year-old plastics manufacturing company, and somebody rightly pointed out nobody's been making plastics for 110 years. We started in wood, but we migrated into plastic early. Before we get into some of our challenges, I thought it would be helpful to maybe lay a little groundwork, because how we approach sustainability has a lot to do with who we are culturally. And so I thought I would take a couple of minutes. I stole a video from my friends in marketing to just give you a quick glimpse into who Rehrig Pacific is as we start to talk about some of our challenges.
Rehrig Pacific is a company of innovators, people who imagine the world as it could be and make things that will get us there.
Cruising at 90, yeah, me and my crew. Nothing can stop us, we do what we do, 1000%, and we getting it done.
Our logistics solution business is strengthening the supply chain and waste industry by providing sustainable innovations that help our partners create closed-loop systems. Our delivery solutions business is revolutionizing direct store delivery from the warehouse to store shelves through groundbreaking material handling and technological solutions. We are mindful manufacturers with 8 plants across North America, dedicated to finding new ways to use hard-to-recycle plastics. We're designers and engineers who are rethinking the way systems work together, creating integrated product ecosystems that add real value to the industries they will one day live in. We are best-in-class service providers focused on enhancing the customer experience for our partners as a valued extension of their teams.
1000%, but we getting better.
We're always looking inward to build a stronger, more inclusive company where more perspectives yield better results. Because in the end, building a better business from the inside out ultimately means building a better way of life for each other.
1000%, but we getting better.
Rehrig Pacific is a family that celebrates our people and empowers them to create innovative solutions that effectively and responsibly move goods, resources, and ideas.
1000%.
We are Rehrig Pacific.
Getting better.
And so I don't know if you caught, but she talks through our mission statement, which includes the statement to responsibly move goods, resources, and ideas. We've been in reusable packaging since 1913. The first product off the line was a wooden battery box that was meant to help ship batteries from point A to point B and back. And that has been core since our founding. Now, we obviously do a lot more, as you saw there. I like to tell, I think my CEO cringes every time I say it, we're no longer a plastics manufacturing company. We're a technology company that happens to produce plastic. And as a result, when we think about what we're doing from a sustainability perspective, our goals are to help our customers achieve their sustainability goals. Some of the products you saw in there, maybe you've never interacted directly with Rehrig Pacific, but I will almost guarantee you if you spend any time in a grocery store in the domestic, or in this market, in the US, maybe even in Canada, you will have interacted to one degree or another with our products. If you've bought product from Amazon, there's a good chance that at some point, that thing that you bought lived in a tote that was manufactured in one of our facilities. As Aditi started talking through all of the capabilities within AWS to build, one of our core goals was to find a way to do this, honestly, without leveraging our developer resources. We've been building AI and ML-based applications on top of AWS services for 5 years. We are a technology company. But when I think about ESG and we think about the opportunity to take our existing development teams and leverage Bedrock and Textract and Kendra to go build a solution, as an IT guy, I'm literally going, guys, I don't want to do that. I'd rather find one of our partners. I'd rather find a platform that leverages technology that we know to do it for us. And that's where, as we started thinking about this, we started looking across the market. We'd actually procured an ESG solution from a non-AWS-based platform. And we continued to run into challenges because, frankly, the offerings we were finding were standalone. They didn't integrate well with our environments. They honestly didn't integrate well with our people. Most of the people who are required to put in this data don't know anything about sustainability. Aditi quoted BCG saying that 86% of companies still enter this data manually in spreadsheets. Well, guess what? That was Rehrig Pacific 9 months ago. And if you can imagine, when you've got office managers and various AP personnel around the country at our 17 different facilities manually entering this data, by the time it got to the sustainability team, they had to recheck everything. People would swap periods for commas. It wouldn't be entered in kilowatt hours, or they'd see something that was meant for actual consumption, and they'd put a dollar figure in there. And so we ended up redoing a lot. It was very time intensive. And as a result of that, we really only did it one time a year. We'd get to it so that we could get our sustainability report put together and out the door. And as a result, that data wasn't very timely, and there was really no opportunity midstream to take a look at our utilization and make different data-driven decisions to improve and reduce our overall emissions. And every amount of our emissions that we can take out of the environment really not only makes us more efficient and a more responsible consumer, but it also helps our customers achieve their goals. The more we can drop the net carbon impact of every plastic thing we send out the door, that has benefits for us, but it also has benefits for them. So as we started to think about this, we started making the circuit with some of our existing partners. We've done work with Tensor IoT for 5 years. I shared with their CEO some of the challenges we were having, and he said, hey, I need to introduce you to the guys at FlexZero. Because FlexZero was already building a platform based on the capabilities, and obviously you saw the demo in that use case. I now have staff in 17 facilities in that exact interface, probably today, given where we're at in the month. We've got a bunch of things kind of coming in. Tensor had the benefit of knowing our business model. They knew who we are, they knew what was happening, and they basically commented that the FlexZero platform that they were putting together would integrate well with everything that we were trying to achieve. And as an IT guy, I'm sitting here going, one, it's gonna live within my production environment in AWS. It's gonna integrate well with our identity provider. As we're thinking about the future state of our factories, where we want to get more granular with our data, including with our utility consumption data, we've got the opportunity to do that if we're leveraging something that is sitting on platform. And so it took about 9 weeks to actually get the platform fully up and running within our environment, to get our staff trained, to get them logging in. And so we've now been several months down the path of the opportunity to bring that data in. And we're talking everything from our propane utilization. We have a lot of forklifts in our facilities, our utility consumption for water and for power. One of the things that was interesting, Aditi showed how they're using Textract to pull just the raw data off of those sheets. But one of the things that we found is in some of our regions and some of our facilities, our utility providers are actually breaking apart our utilization by energy source. So we don't even have to use the regional basis. In Texas, for example, our utility provider in Dallas shows me how much came from natural gas, how much was from nuclear, how much was from wind. And we're actually getting that raw data injected into what we're getting out of the FlexZero team. And so that data collection has become very consistent. We're now not doing it manually. Our sustainability team is actually spending time thinking about and having conversations with our facility managers about how they can improve sustainability instead of just working through how to manage that data input. We also have a pretty strong level of integration. Aditi talked about one of the challenges being that there's so many standards and different ways to report, different things that people want to care about. We certainly have a view as we think about what we're going to report in our annual sustainability report. But at the end of the day, all of our customers have perspectives as well. Depending on where we may be manufacturing a product, or depending on where they are headquartered, we often get ad hoc report or requests to get data into a different format. We used to spend a lot of time manually making those adjustments, and now we don't do it. It's a couple of clicks and it's done, and it can be provided directly. The other thing that we've gotten is what I would classify as near real-time KPIs, and I'll say this with a hint because you'll see on the next slide some things that this is as near real-time as it gets when you're basically putting data in one time a month. But it has unlocked the opportunity because now it's not just the sustainability team, which is relatively small. They're not the only ones looking at the data. I've got my plant managers, I've got shift supervisors looking at their data and understanding, hey, we could make some different decisions today. And the analytics that we've been able to apply across the entire environment have been really meaningful. A good example is we identified that propane utilization was our #1 contributor to Scope 1 emissions. We have a bunch of forklifts, not as many as Amazon, we got a lot. And when we started to aggregate this data, we realized that there was a really good opportunity that not only made financial sense, but that was also going to have a major impact on our overall sustainability by converting those forklifts to electric forklifts. And so we're in the process of finalizing those changes, meaning they're rolled out at most of our facilities today. But that was an insight that we didn't have access to before we started leveraging this platform and started getting this data in a meaningful, consistent way. So when we think about what's next, there are three big things that we're looking at as we continue to evolve on this journey, both with AWS and with FlexZero and with Tensor. One, we're looking at opportunities to automate emission factor selection. And so not only leveraging, as we get more granular details about where we're spending our money, where we're buying our electricity, we're actually getting recommendations back to our facility managers about, hey, you need to go talk to your provider about shifting this, because if we downshift that to a cleaner source, here's the impact that that's going to have. Another key component is we're looking forward to, and FlexZero is already working on integrating the generative components. You saw the query component, but one of the things that is actually happening now is we're about to get capabilities so that anybody who logs into that platform at Rehrig can ask questions of that sustainability data, and they no longer have to be a sustainability expert. I don't know how many of you guys are sustainability experts. I am very much not one. And so when the facility that I oversee, when we have to make those decisions, I'm usually calling my peer who runs sustainability and going, Erica, please tell me what to do. In the near future, I won't have to do that. I'll be able to ask those questions directly. I'll be able to get those answers. I may still need that team to clarify, but they become an advisor, a trusted advisor. I've got the data, I have the access, and I have the recommendations from the system to be able to do it on its own. Now, one thing that I think is still challenging for us is that we're really only collecting this data, one, on our billing cycles, and two, at the facility level. And so we spend a lot of time, our factories manufacture a lot of different things for a lot of different customers. And so one of the challenges that we still have is understanding the specific carbon impact of a particular product for a particular customer. If you saw the rollout carts or trash cans in the video, we probably produce about 2,200 variants of that every year. Well, some of those colors have different materials, depending on how much branding is on them, depending on how far they have to travel. There can be a lot of variances in the LCAs for those products. And so we are working with FlexZero to effectively integrate with our smart factory systems so that as we're feeding data into AWS already, we can augment that data with power utilization at the machine level, and then they can ingest that to provide a level of granularity within the sustainability reporting that we could never achieve before. One of the interesting things, we've got a little R&D effort running as we start working on this initiative, and we're identifying, we're a manufacturing company, we run our capitalized assets into the ground. There's still a machine in Kenosha, Wisconsin that has been producing plastic since 6 years before I was born, and it's still running. And the reality is it costs a couple $1,000,000 to replace that thing. And so the question has often come up, well, we should just keep running it until it becomes untenable to replace it. But we're starting to get some raw data that suggests that we probably should be replacing it, because not only from a sustainability perspective, but even the direct monetary impact of the increase of efficiency and throughput is starting to make sense. And so that's a very early journey for us. These are things that we're looking at very heavily, not only just as we create our, convert our factories into smart factories, but then making them more sustainable. We're what we like to call a cradle-to-cradle company, which is to say that we're going to send you a plastic thing, and there's a better than average chance that it's got recycled material in it already. But when you're done with that thing, 10 to 15 years from now, when it's too damaged to go on, you're going to send it back to me, and I'm going to grind it up and put it back in the next thing I send you. And the more we can close that loop, and the more efficient we can make that loop, the better off we'll be, the better off our customers will be, and the better off our environment will be. And so you can see a quick example. I wanted to say, because it's easy, I don't know how many times you guys come to these things, it's easy to have somebody with Aditi's level of expertise get up here and talk about how it's a thing and it works and you see the demos. This is actually a snapshot of my FlexZero dashboard. It's a real thing. It exists. I've probably got 50 people using it this week as we're working through this stuff. And it's been very meaningful. You can see that we've been able to set some goals. We've been able to track data towards those goals. We're making strong progress towards them. We're able to get a lot of these details. And again, we're working to make that even more granular and even more real time as we continue to work with our partners. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining our session. Today, we'd like to wrap it up with a few call to action items. As you can see, a bunch of QR codes on this slide. If you are interested in checking out on what ESG reporting solutions we have, you can check out our AWS Solutions library. If you want to learn more about FlexZero, there is a QR code with a link to the FlexZero solution on the AWS Marketplace. And finally, if you want to try out any of the demos, we actually have a sample code for the utility bill processing using Amazon TextRack and the emission factor mapping. And if you have any questions, feel free to stop by the Sustainability Showcase booth at Caesars Forum. You can interact with the Gen AI demo that we featured this morning. And Brian and I will be available in the hallway if you have any questions. With that, we'd like to wrap it up, but thank you, and we'd really appreciate if you complete a session survey in your app this morning. Thank you so much, and have a great day.